Today my guest is Elena Tonetti Vladimirova. Elena Tonetti Vladimirova is the founder and director of the constantly expanding international organization Birth into Being, which is dedicated to conscious evolution and the creation of a thriving future social structure based on love, compassion, and common sense. Speaker, filmmaker, and author, Elena artfully uses multimedia to share her message with the world. Her 32 years of tireless commitment has earned her the status of spiritual midwife to thousands of people. But I just wanted to thank you before we begin, just personally, for your work. I'm a huge fan, and your films really changed my life. I just had my first baby 2 years ago, and I did it unassisted, and it was the most rewarding experience I've ever had, but I would not have felt as confident as I did if I hadn't, come across your work. So just a personal thank you.
Bless your heart. Are you recording already?
Yes, I started, but I can turn it off if you want, or I can edit any of this out.
No, that was lovely to include in the beginning.
Yeah.
But you would be able to edit stuff out, right?
Absolutely. So if there's anything that you'd like me to edit out after, you just let me know.
Okay, but that introduction is a very good one.
Yeah, I'll definitely leave that in there.
Yeah. All right.
So we'll start off with our first question here. I wanted you to tell our listeners, what was it that got you interested in looking into not only birth trauma, but just birth practices in general?
Well, long before I got interested in working with birthing energies, with birthing field, I was already deeply involved with anything that was carrying the energy of a breakthrough. Being a young, passionate adult in Siberia that left a lot of areas that were looking for improvement. So I was always very active, and I was working with socio-political, economical, psychological aspects of our life. There is more on my website about all of that. Even my first documentary was about our community building. In the 70s in Siberia, we started this movement of building communities that were successfully uniting hundreds of thousands of people in Russia. And we were just looking for the ways to have good life, within the oppressive system.
Right.
And at some point, I stumbled on a person who was deeply involved with waterbirth. And I was asked to help him because it seemed like he has some good ideas. At that time, birthing was not even in the vicinity of my thinking. I wasn't even planning to have my own children because in my understanding, multiplying misery was not a virtue. So I thought that I would just dedicate my life to existing people instead of making more. But after I heard him explaining to me why he is involved with waterbirth, it was his pioneering idea that we need to place laboring women in the water, which sounded completely crazy back then in 1982 when I met him. And of course, he was deemed crazy by many people, and there was a lot of attempts to place him in a mental institution.
Wow.
Thankfully unsuccessful. But the way he described it to me made total sense to me. And I got him. What he was saying is that unless we change the way we make people, we're going to create more and more mess. That we can't really fix what is unless we change the human being itself. And he said that to change the actual human being, you can't just start after they start misbehaving.
Right.
You need to start from the beginning. And the ultimate question was, where is the beginning? And it turns out that birth is not even the beginning. That by the time we're born, we are already imprinted on wide range of misfunction, just due to absorbing a lot of misfunction in the world around the mother when she's pregnant, including the kind of a partner she attracts in her life from that place of malfunction. You know, a lot of babies are born not ideally, I should say it, when the father and the mother were on the same page of bringing forth this amazing spirit, of providing the three-dimensional form for this beautiful soul. And when they're on the same page about the time of this child, about the qualities of parenting they want to engage in, you know, that's ideal situation that provides a blissful birth from the start. If the mother and the father of the future baby start preparing for it from before they even conceive the child, so the quality of the sperm and the egg by the time of conception is in its ultimate shape and form, because the quality of egg and sperm defines a lot of the qualities of gestation and birth and parenting. So it only makes sense, you know, if you want to create a masterpiece of dinner, you want to start with the best ingredients that your farmer's market or your organic foods department offers, right? You're not going to go for some really outdated ingredients. So it's the same thing with making anything in your life, writing a poem or having good relationships or building a garden. You know, making a person really starts from the intention of creating a masterpiece. And then when the two parents are really aligned with this intention, they connect with the spirit of the child, and everything starts unfolding from there. And it just incredible experience for everybody involved, versus when the baby was conceived kind of in spite of them, accidentally, or even when they did not want to conceive. Not only, okay, now that we conceived, we're gonna get on with the program and catch up with what's happening. Lots of parents do get on board after they found out that they're pregnant, but unfortunately, quite high percentage of parents never does, and then the baby's body is built in the environment of resentment and hesitation, and that definitely flavors the quality of birth and parenting too. So when we start looking at where we begin, it's really difficult to point the exact moment, of course, but roughly, you know, with the best case scenario, we can put a few months before the conception. But it could be that a woman is connected with the soul of that baby from the time she was 5 years old, or maybe it's like always been there, that connection, or just simply, you know, a bit prior to conception. So there is no one specific point when this happens. It's just the awareness and intention that we can have that can assure the beautiful beginning of the new human being, which is absolutely mystical, mysterious, on top of being a simple physiological anatomical process of building the body. But it's also a deep shamanic journey for a woman when she is uh, allowing herself to become a portal for a new universe to come through her. It's a highest honor. It's when she's the goddess, when she is a manifester into reality, something that did not exist before, something that men were trying to replicate when they go and study to become a magician, and they, pull the rabbit out of a hat. It's kind of their attempt to participate in this mystery of invoking into existence something that did not exist. And we really have no business to treating a birth of a new human being as we take it for granted. It's like, oh, another birth. No, there is nothing about birth that we actually know how it works. We can describe all kinds of, what it looks like at different stages of making a person. But we have no idea. All the science that we have has no idea what actually takes place and how it happens. So I think inviting a little bit of humbleness into it and reverence, that would really be supportive of creating a higher quality of this birthing environment. But going back to your question, what got me started? When he explained it to me that way, back then in 1982, all the way in Russia, when nobody was talking about it, he was a true pioneer in this field. I just got it. I brought him home with me and introduced him to our team. We had the whole team of beautiful, well-educated, very smart, intelligent people. We were working together with this kind of striving to come up with new ways of better life. And I said, we're going to work with birth now. And their jaws dropped, and it's like, we're going to do what now? But because it was very clear, it just made sense that unless we change the way we make ourselves, we're going to create more and more mess. That when we look around at the quality of our civilization, it just not very good. In many places, it's like, is that the best we can do? We have 250 wars going on right now. Is that the best we can do? Like, who needs it? Nobody needs it, but it's still going on consistently in every country, in every century. We keep killing each other instead of cooperating, supporting, being creative together. And it's now actually better than ever, because now we have this notion of love introduced into our mass mentality, really. It's a new notion. For thousands of years, women didn't really have much choice. They were either traded or sold or arranged into some family according to the policies or economic status, or who was asking women before. If we look at the classical literature, it's just full of stories that love was a taboo. Love was a deadly adventure. You fall in love and then you die. So it's historically, our great-grandmothers were bound to marry somebody they just met and didn't know, and they didn't know anything about sex, didn't know anything about their reproductive rights.
No, they didn't. They had no idea about their fertility or how, what times they would get pregnant. They just really, I know my grandma had 11 children, and I don't think she knew. I don't think she could say no. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. And because of the reasons of our anatomy that, with your grandma, when she was a fetus inside her mother, that fetus was inside her grandmother. You know, that the eggs are forming halfway through pregnancy. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, 4.5 months, her eggs were forming. So that little boy that became my grandson was already inside me when I was still pregnant with her. So basically everything that was happening with me was being recorded within him. You know those Russian Matryoshka dolls that they call nest dolls? It's one inside the other, inside the other. And that's basically a metaphor of how we are, we the people. So, yeah, so whatever it was that our mothers, our great mothers, their great mothers, it's all kind of being handed down in ways that we can't really kind of talk ourselves out of, because all of this happening on a cellular level, on the DNA level, on the precognitive primordial level. So when I hear that people go to psychotherapy for 11 years, 15 years, 17 years, and how little it actually changes, it can help us understand why we carry forth so many dysfunctional patterns, but it doesn't really help us change anything because they're all programmed way before we got cortex formed, the function of speaking or understanding and articulating. And Mr. Freud really did us all a big disservice when he said, I think, therefore I am. And he kind of introduced this notion that a human being starts after they kind of are able to reflect on their experiences and discuss them. It's so not true, because usually we now understand with looking at all the enormous body of research of prenatal psychology that by the time of birth, our personality, our character, our preferences are already set. That our nervous system has a very clear basic settings by our first day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That kind of brings me to my... Oh, there's a little bit of an echo. Could you possibly turn down the volume? Oh, there we go. That's better. So I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about the limbic imprint. This is something that I was not aware of until I looked at some of your work, and it's really, really important. So maybe you could just give a brief synopsis of what it is and why it is so important.
Oh, absolutely. All of what I just described is basically due to the imprinting that happens in our nervous system from the moment of conception throughout gestation, birth, and early childhood, basically until the child gets a very clear, strong sense of self. Until, which I'm not actually putting any specific age number on it, because different people have a different time frame for acquiring self-identity. It greatly depends on the parenting style, on the environment they're in, on their cultural, economic, religious background, on the quality of the self-identity of the parent, actually of both parents, actually of all the people in the family. So some children get that sense of identity by the time they're 2, or even earlier, and some people never get it. They just keep doing what mass media kind of dictates them to do, kind of going in on autopilot without that strong sense of self. So there is no specific age, but until the child is able to identify that I and the mama begins. Very early, there is no difference for baby. What mother is going through, they're going through. And there is no concept of separation in the beginning. But then slowly we start acquiring that awareness that mama and myself are actually two different people. And then that sense grows and grows and grows, or not. That's the whole point, or not. But this is just about the time frame about limbic imprint. Now, what is it? A limbic imprint is the automatic function of the nervous system to absorb and register all the sensory data within. It was used to believe that it starts at birth. But the more we dive into neurobiology and neuroscience, the earlier we see the signs of imprinting. So then it was put to the time when the emotions are available, sensations, feelings, which is about halfway through pregnancy, when the child develops all the basic sensory apparatus. But it turns out that it starts even earlier, that some of our journeys reflecting the way we were conceived, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and we don't have an explanation for that yet, but it doesn't make it not so. We just, whenever we start looking at something, we see the evidence we want to see. So, the field of prenatal psychology is still young. The neurobiology is still young. So I'm sure we're in for a lot of surprises and discoveries. And the more we learn, the more it blows our mind. How deeply we're all interconnected within our family lineage, within our nationality, within our civilization, really. That it's basically just few people multiplied, and we all belong to the same family. But that doesn't really help us at the moment when we deal with something that we were conditioned to in our particular childhood by our particular parents. So the limbic imprinting is our cellular memory of our beginning. It's really difficult to describe how it functions, but if you understand the concept that water contains memory, you can easily relate to what I'm saying at the moment. There is also a huge body of research on the way water contains memory. Does it ring a bell to you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen that. I think he was maybe a Japanese scientist that did some research on that.
Matsumoto started the whole movement, and now it's pretty wide knowledge that water is this mysterious substance that not only can memorize what it's exposed to, but also doesn't really behave like earthy substance. Water is the only matter that can be either solid or liquid or ethereal. It just really is an amazing substance. And given the fact that fetuses are basically 99% water, this is basically the same mechanism, how we absorb the environmental information and just keep it. Unless the environment changes, we can start making shifts in our own nervous system, and we can alter our even genetic landscape. Again, as you know from the latest research in neuroscience, that we're not slaves and we're not ruled by our genes and our DNA. We can actually intend changes, and changes are always happening, but when we intend it consciously, we would like those changes better. We're not going to be just subjected to some environmental pollution or negativity that we absorb on mass media or from other people. It's I am a strong believer in conscious mutation, because our environment is changing so fast. And it's very simple. It all comes down to the same change that every species on this planet is going through. When environment changes, the species either has to mutate or die out. So we're basically now brought to a brink of that decision making. What are we going to do? Because we changed our environment so drastically due to the incredible level of pollution, not only the chaos, the garbage that we create, but also microwaves and all the electronics, all the enormous amount of residue of our activity. So we can't clean it up fast enough. They found DDT on the North Pole in the probe of ice taken from 6 meters below the surface. So if there is 6 meters deep piece of ice on the North Pole and it contains DDT, do you know what DDT is?
Yes, it's a pesticide, right?
It's a highly, highly toxic pesticide, that was used in the fields all over the world and is still used in the third world countries quite profoundly because it's the cheapest. It's really, really accessible and cheap. And the bottom line is that we don't have a place to hide. So what we need to do is crank up the volume of our commitment to our survival and the enthusiasm for preserving this species that we are, because lots of it is so good and so brilliant and intelligent and really, really necessary for this planet. Because the way I see it, that humankind is like a nervous system of this beautiful Gaia, this beautiful little planet that through us, we're like nerve endings, like every human being is like a nerve ending on the surface of her skin. And we deliver all kind of good information. Through us, she hears the songbirds, the beautiful music, the sound of the waves. She can see herself through us.
Yes, that's a really beautiful way of looking at it. And I'd say that, the state of things right now, the reason that they are so bad and are continuing to get worse is probably a lot to do with the majority of the population being severely traumatized in more ways than one, but really starting with conception and birth.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
If we take into consideration that our great-grandmothers consistently were, there was war all the time. There was domestic violence. There was, mothers-in-law who mistreated the brides of their sons. There was just famine, there were diseases, life was not very comfortable, and women were having 10, 20 children before they realized that they don't have to. So by the time a woman is having her 20th child, what kind of quality of mothering is she able to offer?
Right.
It's not, women were consistently depleted in every single way, mentally, emotionally, physically. And just most of women on this planet Earth lived in fear. So when I was asked repeatedly in every interview, why did we lose our ability to give birth like any cat? Well, there's no cat. Well, maybe there are cats that are in touch with humans that were abused that much. But basically, cats don't live in fear.
Right.
Most of them, you know, most of the natural life, they have an ability to use their capacity for fear very effectively. Like if a deer that gives birth in the wild suddenly hears the predator, they just, you know, within a split second, their brain inflicts a flood of adrenaline that stops labor, that turns cervix into a solid frame that was just a split second before was elastic, soft opening. With adrenaline, it becomes a solid frame. It shrinks and pushes the baby in, and she is able to run for her life and not drop the baby. So basically, that's the mechanism. If a woman knows how to relax, she can give birth. If she is constantly contracted and in anticipation of, some kind of low blow, then she can't open her cervix. Then we need a mechanical extraction or chemical extraction of her baby's body out of her body. So from that point of view, you just can tell, oh, just relax. But how can she relax if inability to relax is 7 generations deep in her family lineage?
Yeah, it's much easier said than done when these things are stored in our body. And that kind of leads me to the next question here. How exactly is trauma, birth trauma in particular, how is that processed, and is it stored in our body, in our nervous system? How does it affect us throughout our lives?
Well, it affects us directly. If we look at our life, and if we know the story of our birth, we can actually see how the trajectory of our life reflects the story of our making. As above, so below, it literally translates into our choices, into how we make connections, where we live, where we work, how we relate to ourselves, to other people. There is basically not one area in life that is not being affected by our imprinting. The more we learn, the more we are surprised how deeply that imprinting runs within our psyche. And it's called limbic imprint because the imprinting happens within the limbic part of the brain, responsible for our feelings, sensations. It's not the cortex, which runs our mental function, our thinking, our calculating, the logical aspect of our beingness is the cortex. The limbic part is our emotions and feelings. But then there is the physiology that is run by yet another part of the brain that is called reptilian brain. It's right on top of the spinal cord. It's called reptilian because it's the most ancient part of the brain. We share it with snakes and crocodiles. It's pure physiology. It starts forming first, and then limbic part forms, and then the cortex, and then the neocortex. But given the fact that we have the reptilian and limbic brain before we get our cognitive brain, a lot of that imprinting happens literally in those layers that we can't think ourselves into. So what we need to do in order for us to neutralize the damage that we carry, that was handed down to us from generations of drama and bloody human history, we need to go into that part of our beingness and bring some comfort from knowing what we know. With the cortex is very important, and that part of knowing is very important when we need to go into the underworld. This is the best explanation of the world's mythology that speaks about the journey into the underworld. Did you notice that every mythology from every culture in the world has that moment when the hero goes into the underworld to retrieve that which was the most beloved, the most important? And in this journey, the beloved is ourselves, our soul, our own connection with the source, that is our birthright, but which gets severed when we dissociate due to overwhelming sensory overload during our formative period. I'm sure most of our listeners know about this function of the nervous system to dissociate. That when something really intense happens, mostly people don't remember that. They just check out. So that is the mechanism that nature provided us with, that if we get caught by a predator and we're being eaten alive, basically, it's nice not to feel it. So we have that mechanism of removing us, going numb. So that mechanism is at play when there is sensory overload very early in life, when we're a little squishy, soft, really vulnerable piece of flesh, and we don't have any way of protecting ourselves other than checking out, going numb. But then out there in nature, when, for example, deer who had to run away to save her life, after she ran away, if she ran away, she stops, and within 30 minutes, there is no trace of adrenaline in her bloodstream. She just goes right back to giving birth, and her cervix becomes stretchable, elastic, soft again. And there off she goes. She doesn't hold on to that flood of stress hormone. It just flushes. She starts shaking violently, and then she just shakes it off. That shaking is like a reset button in her nervous system.
It's just incredible. I'm very jealous because during my birth of my son, although it was unassisted, I did have fear come up towards transition, where that's pretty typical, but I was very just nervous going into it as well, and my body did lock up, and I had a very hard time for the last couple hours, thinking he's never going to come out, he's stuck, but it was because I started to become fearful. I started to not trust the process, and my body just locked up. So, I think I personally probably processed some of my own birth trauma in that experience. I definitely can understand that process of freezing up, and I'd say that this is why women are having such difficult births, and why all of these, technological interventions are so plentiful these days because, like you've said, we've just forgotten. And it's not a blaming thing. It's not saying, oh, women are terrible, or, oh, if you had a painful birth, you're bad. No, but we've definitely, you know, especially in the Western world, we've really lost touch with the ancestral ways and of that innate knowledge. You know, it's kind of, well, it's an instinct, so it tells me that it had to be programmed out of us somehow, you know?
Right. And of course, no, there is no blame. That's why I never say that, oh, you should have natural birth or you should have water birth. There's something that I'm not saying for the last 20 years. No, I would say 30 years. Sorry, I've been at it for 34 years. And in the beginning, I was a really avid promoter of water birth and natural birth. No, I am now promoting conscious birth. And a woman can have conscious C-section. She can have a conscious, you know, whatever, normal, natural delivery in the hospital, wherever she is, as long as she understands herself, her process, and is responsible for her education. What impact her decisions have on the child, and that she informed herself appropriately, and she's really responsible, you know, not just letting somebody else make decisions for her, or just getting the tradition or culture. I'm not against traditions. I'm against those traditions that are harmful for women and children. Yes. So, which unfortunately is the majority of traditions.
Yeah.
Because the majority of traditions on this planet right now created by man for man. And they do not have good role models of respectful honoring of children and women. So this is what we need to correct and create new traditions that would empower women and children and recognize their intelligence and wisdom, and support them in claiming their power and becoming the true beings. You know, that's the thing. If I am a nerve ending and I'm all contracted and just numb, I'm not a very good nerve ending, right? Right. In order for me to fulfill my destiny and perform my main job description of adequate perception of what is, which is an amazing, beautiful blue planet that we have under our feet. In order for us to navigate her evolution and our human evolution, our spiritual growth, we do need to have adequate sensory apparatus that delivers the correct information and helps us know right from wrong, good from bad, right from wrong. You know, I can go right from wrong, because it's even in many medical textbooks that they say that humans don't have the innate ability to say right from wrong, that it has to be taught. And this is absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
Every wild animal has the innate sense of right and wrong. What's good for their health, what's not. And when we go to the grocery store, we can tell what food is good for us, what is not good. Because that sense was kind of, you know, not activated. That's the thing. We're taught in school that we have 5 senses. This is highway robbery. That's what it is. Because we have, every time I start counting, I find a dozen more. So at first I counted 12, then it was in 20s, then it was in 80s, then now I am in 120s, because there is so many senses that just not even expected to be our norm, but it is, like sense of rhythm, sense of time, sense of balance, empathy, telepathy, sense of direction. It's all of those senses. I think I even have it on my website. I think I might have published the list of senses. It's, see, even sense of needing to eliminate. It's a sense that we have to activate. You know, the baby is not potty trained, right? We learn to recognize that sense and act according to the sensations that our body delivers to us, right? So it has this deliberate, careful activation, like telepathy, like sense of direction. How do birds know where to go? They know. They have that sense of direction. And many people have it so deactivated that even if they read directions 10 times, they still can get lost. It's again, it's our responsibility to make sure that we give our children a chance to activate all the incredible wealth that our sensory apparatus is capable of. It's the smell, taste, and touch inside is just so basic. That's what, I don't know, slaves need.
Yes, that's it. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really want us keying into those other senses.
Well, yeah, and I never have time to really go into discussion who are those them, but it's really irrelevant who done it, why they did it, they, those, them, you know. The point is that whatever was done needs to be undone. And from that perspective, whoever it was, heck with them. Let's just deal with what we have right now instead of getting angry and kind of waste our energy into speculating what, when, how it happened that we lost our original capacity to see in the dark and hear like any dog can hear. You see, we have the same genetic makeup, only a few hundred out of 30,000 of genes that we share with dogs and cats and birds. You know, only 300 of them are different, and that difference is not going to be at the expense of our sensory system.
Right.
So we basically have the rudiments of all the same incredible abilities. It's just that we don't have the culture of supporting, cultivating, introducing children to the concept that they can do so much more than we could. Because our parents didn't know to teach us those things.
Right, exactly, because no one taught them, and then we have that vicious cycle but it can be broken, and it just takes a conscious person to take a step back and to just really assess the situation, to understand that they probably have experienced trauma, and they're probably memories from generations and generations long ago that are stored within our bodies and that we need to recognize and deal with. And I know we are coming to a close here, and I do want to end it at an hour because I know you have somewhere to be. But I just wanted you, if you could, tell our listeners a little bit about any resources that you might know about on how people can process birth trauma. What are some therapeutic modalities that people are using for this. And then after that, if you could tell our listeners about your work, your website, your documentaries, and where they can find your stuff.
Well, with the latest research in this area of birth trauma and early development, there is so much that one can find if they only go through some kind of healing directory or alternative medicine directory locally. I'm sure there is very few places left where there are no practitioners who offer some kind of healing and support. And it just there is an enormous amount of modalities right now. On my end, I've been looking into it for the last 34 years and kind of I was focused and very consistent in observing patterns. I tried everything I could hear of. I modified things. I created my own system. And I kind of noticed what works, what doesn't work, what works for most people, but not for everybody, what I don't have time to waste, because usually when I started working with pregnant women, they would show up at my doorstep in their last trimester, so I didn't have the luxury of many years of therapy. So I was going for what works fast. And now, 34 years later, it's a really comprehensive program that consists of 34 processes and 18 exercises that really don't leave any rocks unturned. And I offer it as workshops. They're called Birth into Being, and there is a lot of information on my website, birthintobeing.com, and anybody can go and read what they are. They're very different. All the processes are very, very different, but they're geared to really address all the aspects of our previous journey, previous to our decision to give birth to a baby or to an upgraded version of ourselves, because we're giving birth to ourselves all the time. But again, we can do it as always, as usual, or we can do it differently at some point. And all our creative projects, we always give birth to them, and the quality of that delivery depends on our own delivery, on the way we were born. So in order for us to address all of the different aspects, first of all, reconnect with that original impulse that inspired us to acquire the form in the physical human body. It doesn't really start out of nowhere. There is first an intention of the spirit, the curiosity, the connection with this particular planet that is behind our ability to walk this earth. And if we allow ourselves to recover that memory of that connection to that original impulse, it changes everything. Everything just has a different angle of perception. What happened? How did we do it? What got us lost? What got us found? So some of the processes that I offer are deeply mystical. Some of them are really fun and playful. Some of them are done by the whole group, and some of them are one-on-one with me, or in groups of 3-4 participants, or 5 or 6 or 7. They're very different, but extremely entertaining because my only formal education was in acting. I graduated from the theater acting school, so I can't stand being bored. This is something that is a must for me, that it would captivate the attention and really be engaging. So I don't know. There is a lot of information on my website, and anybody can just explore.
Can you tell our listeners what the website name is and where they might be able to find any other things that you might have online, such as your documentaries? I know they can purchase those on your website, right?
Yeah, birthintobeing.com. It's a huge website with lots and lots of pages, but there is main menu that lists all the facilitators. Since 2009, I realized that I can't possibly reach enough people by myself, so I better start training other people to do what I do. So since 2009, I started teaching other people, and now they're offering workshops in all major languages in lots of countries, in 22 countries. So I'm very proud mama. And so there are listings of all the languages, countries, workshops that are upcoming. I only do one workshop per year these days. I have one upcoming in July in Germany. And we still have a few places left. Oh, pardon, it's in August. It's in August in Germany. Last year we had people from 19 countries. And this year, even though we didn't even start promotional campaign yet, we already have just a few places left. Wow. In the group. So it's word of mouth. I never have energy, time, or room in my hand to promote, to market. It's just literally kind of having a life of its own, and that's the way it is for now. But my facilitators, that are incredible people. Oh, I'm so proud of them. They will be having ongoing workshops, and they do one-on-one Skype sessions. There's also a listing of available practitioners who offer Skype sessions individually. So, and yes, there is a store button to buy the video. There's hours and hours of videos and interviews, including my very first documentary. It's called How Dreams Come True, about one of our, the first one of our communities in Siberia that started the whole movement of Russian people self-organizing into communities in spite of this oppressive Soviet regime. It was just pure ingenuity, creativity. It's just incredible story about how people within this really oppressive system created an island of democracy and sanity and comfort and fun and pure celebration of life. It's I highly recommend it. It's called How Dreams Come True, and it's available for free on my website. It's terrible quality because I made it in 95 when I did not have a clue about how to make videos. But the story is amazing, and if you would forgive the poor quality of archival footage from the 70s from Russia, when we had, it's all from bobbins, you know, we had those cameras that you spin the bobbin, and it's kind of, it doesn't stand a chance to be a product, but if you can even just listen to the sound, the audio part of it, because the story is amazing. Even for me now, all these years later, 40 years later, I'm still deeply, deeply touched every time. Even though I wrote the story, it's amazing.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah.
I actually haven't seen that myself, so I'm gonna watch that later tonight. That's something that I could use a little inspiration because I would like to create a little island of peace away from all the sanity as well. So I will take a lesson. I'll sit down and take note.
And thank you. And that documentary about the community, share it with your list, with your groups, whatever you are on social media. It is a very inspiring story that many people would find like a really shot in the arm in their enthusiasm with all the amount of chaos that is around.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we could certainly use an uplifting story to inspire us in these times. Elena, thank you so much and have a great rest of your weekend.
Much love to you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.